group recordings with you all in separate places, because the timing just doesn't quite work.
Indeed, indeed. And I mean, there's all sorts of difficulties. For instance, when musicians perform together, you all listen to each other, you all breathe at the same point. There's an awful lot that you do by feeling with one another, which you can't do if you're stuck in your own front room. But what Ben did, he said to each of them, the really critical thing is the timing. He can change intonation, not that they needed to. These are all, competent musicians, but I mean, a lot of them amateurs, but you must have the timing right. So everyone had to have a metronome in one ear. And he said, as long as you've got the timing right, I can make it work. And he has, and it's just funny. And it's out there on YouTube. You can find it under my parents' name, Anthem for Mary and David. And lots of people, I'm getting complete strangers saying I was in tears, but it really calmed me down and made me feel wonderful. And I'm just so proud of Ben. He arranged the music. I only wrote the words, I should say.
Well, it's a lovely thing to have as a memorial to him. Just a last serious word, if you would. You did take seriously the need to cancel that funeral, and you may not have seen it this morning, but there's a shocking news story of a family making a similar plea after it went ahead with the funeral before the social distancing measures were brought in. One of the mourners died from coronavirus and 16 others were infected just at a funeral.
That's terrible.
It is a reminder, Anne, isn't it, that these rules matter. They're there for a reason.
Please take them seriously. We cancelled before we needed to. I was actually relieved because I knew we couldn't do my father justice, but what we did do, and live streamed it, was 4 of us in the family went to my mother's grave with the vicar's permission, and we all lived together, so that was safe. And a few neighbours dotted about far away in the churchyard, also very safe distance, and we live streamed. My husband's a clergyman, and he read some prayers, and we released 3 doves to symbolise my parents and the Holy Spirit flying home together, and hundreds of people joined us online. It was live streamed, and it was really beautiful and safe. So please be safe. But let me just mention Ben's anthem again, Anthem for Mary and David. You can find it easily. Thank you, Nick.
And I can thank you so much for telling us about it.
Brings us to 20 to 9. Here is a tweet from Warrington Police yesterday. Overnight, 6 people have been summoned for offences relating to the new coronavirus legislation. These included out for a drive due to boredom, returning from parties, multiple people from the same household going to the shops for non-essential items. The journalist Nick Cohen has written extensively on the subject of surveillance and freedom, and suggested in The Guardian on Saturday that there was a danger of us becoming not just over-surveilled, we can understand that, but also a nation of little tyrants, and he's on the line. Morning to you.
Good morning.
What do you make of tweets like that?
Well, sorry, I should just say it wasn't The Guardian on Saturday, it was The Observer on Sunday.
I'm so sorry. There you go. I think probably that it's been looked up online and read online, and the two mould into one another, but there you go. Good point.
What do I make? It's what worries me is that the normal mechanisms where, if the police in Warrington were overstepping the lines, I've no idea if they were, the normal mechanisms of a free society for keeping authority in check are vanishing. Most crucially, Parliament just shrugged its shoulders and closed a week or so ago. We haven't done what other democracies have done, set up a virtual parliament, or done what New Zealand's done, had a committee of leading oppositions to scrutinise the behaviour of the state. And, I don't want to lay into the police or anyone else who's doing struggling with the virus with their own ranks as well, and contain an unprecedented situation. But I do worry that in the passion of the moment, when everyone's saying, well, we've got to clamp down, we've got to lock down, we've got to demobilise society and enforce that demobilisation, that we don't have the checks there to make sure that abuses don't occur.
And it's not really abuses necessarily enforced by government, is it? It's wider than that. It's us.
Well, I think it was your colleagues at the BBC had the story yesterday of neighbours phoning the police when they thought some of the people had gone out more than once a day. Which again, you only have to look at the suffering and the awful impositions on the NHS to say, well, what's wrong with that? The point I was trying to make in my piece is, if you look around the world, how this virus is being tackled, reflects national cultures or the faults and virtues of national political systems. So in Hungary and China, dictatorial states are using it as an excuse to grab more power. In Britain, on the whole, I think we've behaved pretty well. I mean, it's quite clear to me that whatever other criticisms you might want to make of Boris Johnson, and I could make a few, he doesn't want to turn us into some kind of police state. I don't think senior police officers do. But I think the rest of us ought to be careful to not get a little carried away with the joys of self-righteousness and the joys of zealotry and be over-eager to turn into informers and snitches.
Is that part of our national characteristic or not, do you think?
Characteristics of certain parts of the nation, there's always a personality side that enjoys denouncing or calling out or imposing penalties of others for real or imagined breaches of social norms. But as I said at the start, the real worry ought to be, and I do hope that when and if Sir Keir Starmer becomes Labour leader, that he addresses this very, very quickly, is we ought to have, as New Zealand has, some kind of system of virtual working where senior MPs, opposition MPs, can at least hold people to account. Because to take your example, if people in Warrington think the local superintendent is going way too far, they can complain to their MP. The MP can't raise the matter in Parliament. There's no way. All the healthy ways for democracy, for raising questions, remedying grievances, seeing, for instance, to go back to what you were talking about in your programme earlier, seeing, for instance, why the health service is failing to get equipment to doctors who need it, why we can't test. These things are being shut down. And everyone else, I assume you are as well, is working virtually except for democratic politics.
Yeah, it is an interesting, set of subjects, really. Nick Cohen, thank you. And the World at One is going to be picking up on what we've just been talking about with the Supreme Court Justice, former Supreme Court Justice, Lord Sumption at 1. Nick Cohen, thanks.
It's coming up to 14 minutes to 9. France is launching a new app to monitor coronavirus cases inside retirement homes after growing numbers of deaths there. Currently, only deaths in hospital are counted in the daily toll. A health authority for the Paris region says a third of care homes have been affected, with the epidemic expected to spread over the next few days. Our Paris correspondent Lucy Williamson now reports.
Deliveries like this one point to a hidden crisis in France. Wooden coffins, still wrapped in their factory plastic, are wheeled awkwardly up to the sealed gates of the Rothschild care home in Paris. The deaths that have happened here during the coronavirus epidemic are officially invisible, but you can count the coffins that arrive. The Rothschild care home has lost 16 residents to the virus. Another 80 are infected. The delivery men here told one waiting journalist it was non-stop. Alexandre Sonnet works as a GP for another care home in Vosges in the east of France, where at least 20 people have died.
There was a cluster of about 50 people with fever over 5 days, followed by symptoms of severe pneumonia, so we had to use oxygen. At the height of the epidemic here, there must have been 25 or 30 patients on oxygen.
More than a third of care homes in the Paris region are thought to have been affected by coronavirus. But while hospital deaths are recorded in the daily toll, deaths in care homes are not. The government is launching an app to monitor cases here and include them in its national totals. France's most senior health official has said that numbers could spiral as a result. At the beginning of March, President Macron visited a care home to talk about protection. He was filmed sitting at a table surrounded by elderly residents. No face masks then, no social distancing. A few days later, all visits to France's retirement homes were banned, and last week the government said all residents should be individually isolated in their rooms. But care workers say that they are now the biggest risk to residents. We talked to one nurse who wanted to be known just as Carol. She said that some homes were keeping masks in reserve for a coronavirus outbreak and not giving them to staff. And with many workers off sick or in isolation themselves, she says, the spread of this virus is very hard to control.
As soon as the coronavirus enters a care home, it's all over. There is nothing we can do. Since we don't have enough staff, it will be dramatic. Once the virus enters, there will be a huge number of deaths.
Space in hospital life support units in the Paris region is now critically low, and there are shortages of some drugs. The health minister has said France will begin mass testing of its population and has ordered 1 billion face masks to protect healthcare staff. The Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, has extended the national quarantine for another 2 weeks.
We collectively face a considerable challenge. I will tell you clearly and frankly, the fight has only just begun. The first fortnight of April will be even more difficult than the past 15 days. The collective effort is first and foremost that of those on the front line, the caregivers, and all those who contribute to the French healthcare system.
Every night, French residents stand at their open windows to applaud the country's medical staff. Musicians have begun playing to their neighbours from balconies. Solidarity with doctors, nurses and care home workers is one thing, but polls suggest that trust in the government has plummeted, even before the wave of this epidemic has peaked.
That was Lucy Williamson reporting from Paris. The time is exactly 10 to 9. It was reported in the Mail on Sunday over the weekend that senior Downing Street sources believe there will have to be a reckoning, as they put it, with China over what they suggest is a list of deficiencies and obfuscations that has led to this worldwide pandemic. We know, of course, that the initial reports of the virus resulted in police action rather than health action, but since then China has claimed that it is being much more open, and the World Health Organization thinks it has too. We can talk to Victor Gao, who runs a think tank based in China and talks to us often on this program about Chinese policy. Good morning to you.
Good afternoon.
Can I ask you this first of all? Do you accept that when this is all over, there will have to be a change in the way China behaves, and that the outside world can reasonably expect to have assurances about how that change will pan out in the future?
I think coronavirus 2019 will change many ways, and will change the images and the assessment of the behavior of almost all the governments of all the countries in the world. In this context, what China has been doing is truly remarkable, and it is widely acclaimed by the WHO and by many, many countries in the world. Don't forget, by the end of 2019, China already officially filed with the WHO about what they found about this virus. And since the beginning of January, China has kept WHO, as well as, for example, U.S. government, constantly informed about the major developments of this whole thing. And if anyone missed any of this filing with the WHO, and member states have the full advantage of the benefits of the filing, then at least every country in the world would get the major signal when China locked down the Wuhan city, which had a population of about 11 million people, and later, a few days later, locked down the whole province of Hubei, which had a population of 60 million.
Yes,
and British Airways,
no, I understand all that.
the first airline to cancel all its flights to China.
Can I just put this to you, though? It is a simple fact, isn't it? And you've acknowledged it on this program before. It is a simple fact that the initial response was not what it should have been. The initial response by bureaucrats, possibly not directed by Beijing, but nonetheless by bureaucrats locally, was to clamp down on information and bully the doctors who warned about it. And I suppose what my question is, can the outside world expect that when this is over or controlled, that China says we will not do that sort of thing again?
Now, first of all, China is a big country. China's population is more than all the OECD countries combined. Every day there are lots of mistakes happening in China involving all kinds of mistakes. And as I mentioned before, in the weeks running all the way up to January the 21st, of course there were many things which can be improved, but China did fighting with the WHO, did keep major countries informed, and China did take draconian measures to lock down the Wuhan city and the Hubei province.
Can I ask you this, Mr.
Anyone in Britain?
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah. Can I ask you this? We're slightly short of time, so sorry to interrupt. But when the Downing Street uses that phrase, a reckoning, I just wonder whether there isn't a sense in which the reckoning is not for China, but is actually for the West, because we knew about China's system, we know about what we think of it, but we chose to be very heavily engaged with you in terms of travel and in terms of trade. In a sense, would you accept that the decisions to be made are not in China, they're outside China?
No, I think eventually the British people and the British government need to do the right thing. And right now, the right thing is to do the correct things to contain the spread of the virus and make sure that everyone in the United Kingdom, men or women, kids and elderly, need to be saved. Cut off the spread of the virus as much as you can, because you cannot do the traditional way. You cannot do a lot of other calculations. You need to follow the logic of this coronavirus. And the only way to deal with it is to deal with it forcefully by doing quarantine, lockdown, and make sure that the spread of the virus is cut down. That will save the British people, and we are all together with you.
Victor Gao, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Time now is 5 to 9.
Now, anyone who's been to a park recently, and that is more than usual, of course, will know that there is a tension building up in parks across the country between joggers and dog walkers. Joggers accused of being unhygienic, coming too close as they pound the paths. Dog walkers, well, too often in the way, and perhaps out more than once a day as well. Bella Mackey is on the line, runner, author of Jog On, and Peter Egan, the actor and animal campaigner, and indeed dog owner. Morning to you both.
Hi, morning.
Describe what's going on, Peter Egan, first of all.
Well, from what I gather, there is too much unawareness of spatial awareness, too many people getting too close together. In fact, a park, this is not to do with dog walkers or joggers, but I think Victoria Park in North London, because people were flouting the spatial awareness thing, they closed the park down. So people in the surrounding area now can only walk their dogs in the street, which I think is a dreadful situation. I think even before the coronavirus, there was a problem between people who walk their dogs and joggers, because we humans have a strange sense of dominance, and that we feel that we own the space if we got there first. And the only way to deal with that, with or without this virus, is to be very considerate of each other.
Yeah. Do you accept, Bella Mackey, there has to be a new kind of jogging etiquette that perhaps possibly wasn't vital before, but might have been interesting to see?
Oh, absolutely. I think, especially given that, people who are running at the moment, it's not exactly vital, you might say. So when I'm running, I make sure that I'm at least 6 feet from anyone. If I see someone across the road or jump into the middle of the road, I think it's completely the onus is on the runner to be extra considerate, not make anyone feel, panicked or uneasy.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say the onus is on the runner, because I think what a lot of people think is actually runners, you tend to be in your own space and your own head in a way when you're running, don't you? And it's a matter of adding something to what you'd normally do.
You do, and runs feel quite different for me now. I'm much more alert, and they're slightly more nervy.